Hey guys, welcome to my video. My name is Richelle. In this video, we're going to be talking about Anne Heche. Something that I wanted to talk about was, why wasn't it classified a suicide?
We begin with breaking news at 11, and word just in that actress Anne Heche is not...
Yeah, I just can't believe no one's talking about this. It's insane that it's been called a accident or accidental death. It's, yeah, interesting. Schizophrenia, bipolar, and mental health was very much, and a very tragic situation with her father, her mother's relationship, and her childhood experience. So hopefully I can break it down for you and give you guys like everything I'm learning through my psych degree. Is like, this is why I love doing psychology. It's breaking down the pieces of someone's puzzle and putting together how it occurred or why it occurred. Yeah, so anyway, let's get right into it. I can't wait to dive deeply into this because I've been studying my ass off. Excuse my language, it's an Aussie thing. But yeah, what I want to talk about is my analogy of how I've seen her deteriorate. And this is the progression I want to show as we go along in this video. I'm going to show different types of interviews, and you can, what I mean by a baseline is without drugs and alcohol, and when she's fully mentally well in her life, these are the types of interviews. That's why you call it a baseline. It's like when you're at your best. So you're looking at the behavior. So, and then I'm going to go through her podcast and show you what sort of, if you can see what I was seeing just before the car accident, and why I believe that she committed suicide. I believe she intentionally drove into that house. She had erratic behavior before, which explains that she was almost on the verge of another breakdown. And I'm hoping to prove, while I'm doing the progression of the interviews and explaining the body language and the behavior, what you can see. But yeah, so anyway, let's do it.
Fisher Sisters.
I did pretty good with that song. You see me? I'm
Getting really
We're better together with Anne and Heather.
Hi, everybody. You are listening to Better Together with Anne and Heather. Today, we have two gorgeous ladies joining us in the studio.
We have the Fisher sisters, Trisha Lee and Jolie Fisher.
I mean, it really does sound like a band, doesn't it? The Fisher Sisters. We're going to jump right into In the Moment, everybody, and hear what Heather has experienced this week that we could have no idea what it is.
In the moment.
Did you ever try to reach out and make peace with Ellen?
You know, every day of my life with her was reaching out to her to make peace. I think it was a very difficult thing for her to trust that I was a woman who could fall in love with a woman without being gay. And I think that was a lot to process. So I tried to make that process as simple as possible by quitting Hollywood, moving to Ojai, growing gardens, starting to write and direct, which I did with her and Sharon Stone, a movie of all things called Misconception. And nothing would satisfy her soul.
Now,
With Anne and Heather.
Oh, hi everybody! Welcome back to
It's called Better Together.
It is
With Anne and
with
Heather.
Heather and Anne. All right.
No, we talked about that.
Oh.
It's Anne and Heather.
Oh, it's Anne and Heather. Oh, that's really funny because it rhymes that way.
Yeah.
Oh my God, so cute.
Sure, they go and
Oh, Jesus. I don't know. I got excited.
all right. So
Go
when
ahead.
Jason got out of the car and went to meet his bachelorette, he had a champagne glass or a wine glass with a bottle of wine, and etched in the wine glass was his family's toast.
Wait a minute. The bachelor who dumped him?
Yes. And so
Sorry,
I
that
thought you
was
would
loud.
appreciate this.
Yes, I do.
His family toast is my family toast. It's Kiki's family toast. So Our listeners might hear us say Kiki a lot.
Okay, so listen. So instead of saying God, I say Kiki, and I know everybody who has listened knows this. So this is to Kiki. This is Heather's grandfather, who's very much a part of our lives every day. So what did he say?
He said, to happiness and wealth and all the time in which to enjoy it in.
Oh, I love that.
Because see, all the time covers the fact that you're not going to die.
Got it.
Cheers.
No, did you get that, guys? Okay.
So if you follow me in this video, hopefully I can break it down for you. I did a lot of research. I've been doing this for a week. So something I want to go into is her podcast, which was so intriguing. If you don't get anything out of this video, please go and have a look at her Better Together podcast she did with Heather. It's incredible. It shows a really good insight. If you're really into psychology and breaking down personality, it's so interesting. Like, it is really, really intriguing. It was so beautiful. I'm gonna go through a progression of her interviews and her podcast, do a baseline, and her bipolar, her mental health, and why I believe it was a suicide. Next one is another baseline. This was done about 10 years ago. This is another interview that I found her behavior to be really, really interesting because she's very attentive. She's not jittery. She's not manic. If you can just watch and have a little look and observe some of her behavior, hopefully you can see where I'm going with this. But this is another baseline. This is when she is at her best. And she actually looks really beautiful.
And you look sensational.
That's what she said.
Wait, hey!
Hey, come on.
I really wanted to touch you, but I can't
you.
because, well, you know, in a sort of welcome, but I
Well,
can't.
we're both married, so it's all right.
Yeah, but I would.
That's what she said is really a kind of a raunchy ride with three girls in New York City having a really bad day. And I kind of fell in love with the script because when I opened it up, my character opens in bed.
So here I want you guys to start to observe as I'm going along to the next couple of videos. You'll start to see her behavior change. And this is the indicator that I'm talking about. This is her at baseline. She's very engaging. She's allowing the host to talk, and her body language is very calm. As we go along, I want you to see the deterioration. And I think a lot of what is coming up in the next couple of videos is you can see she's on cocaine or she's self-medicating. Yeah, let's go to the next one. So this interview was done around the time that she was with Ellen. And if you start to notice, she'll use her hands a lot. She's a lot more expressive. She's a little more manic, and you notice that she is still engaging. She's not interrupting the host as much as we get onto the next video. But if you can start to see the behavior it's changing. And let's go to the next video.
Our next guest is an Emmy Award-winning actress, director, and screenwriter. We're so happy to have her. Please welcome Anne Heche. Yeah.
This video or this interview was done around a year ago. This was around the time that she started her podcast. She had been on Dancing with the Stars. These ladies were interviewing her. And if you notice, I'm going to go through and show you her really manic, can't talk, she's slurring. So I think she was on a lot of cocaine and maybe drank alcohol. This is what was one of her things. And if you just watch her behavior and listen to her words, you can start to see this was around the time of the podcast. So I'm pretty sure this was about a year ago. But if you have a listen and see what you think since the last video.
This is my boyfriend. Oh, my fiance. Oh, we're getting married. Oh, we're having a baby. All of that right there.
Am I right?
Done. And then like shaking it on the thing. You were awesome.
We got to get to your interview. interview, darling.
Yes, we have so much to
Sorry, I do a
discuss.
podcast better together with Anne and Heather. You're all on it. You didn't know that?
So, Anne, tell us about your big break. Did it come when you were discovered by the talent scout that discovered you in a high school play, then put you in another world?
Well, I mean, it was certainly that was my biggest one, but the one before that, I did dinner theater in Swainton, New Jersey, played Marillis in music band. So I got to tell you, that was my big break.
Really?
Sure, I was 12 and I got $100 a week, and that started my, that started me gigging for acting all the rest of my life. But yes, I was discovered. I had an angel in my life who saw me in a high school play because she was snowed in Chicago. And Daryl Hannah and Jennifer Beals went to my school. So the talent scout called the school and said, is there a play on tonight?
If you keep watching here, she's using her hands a lot. She's very jittery. She's not really allowing anyone to talk. She's talking over everyone. You can see her brain is going 1,000 miles an hour, and she's not as engaging as she has been in her last interviews. She is all over the place. She even looks disheveled. And if you notice her hands, she keeps touching and feeling herself or the chair or touching her face. Like I said, she barely lets the interviewers talk. She does all the talking. So we're going to keep going.
Any roles that you said no to that now you regret?
Yes.
Like what? I'm all like, what?
Well, here's the thing. When I came to Hollywood, they said it was like a wild animal set free from her cage. I'm not sure if that was a compliment. But I didn't want to ask, so I didn't. I figured I had a 50-50 shot. The thing about me was that I did everything so differently than anybody else that they couldn't help but pay attention, and that's kind of what began happening for the movies. Well, along with that, what went in my life was, oh wow, I'm really getting these great roles. So Speed comes along. Do you remember Speed?
Yes.
Yeah.
One of
Do you know
my
what I
faves.
do? I'm like, Speed. What? Nobody gets stuck in a bus and falls in love. What? This isn't gonna happen. No. Well, of course, right? These are the things that you look at years later today. I think maybe I shouldn't have had so much of a personality. Maybe I should have said yes to more things. Why is my opinion so... But that is one of the reasons why I get to have the pleasure of being in my life right now the way that I want to be. I have done what I've wanted to do. And although it is a circuitous route to being and standing where I want to be, I don't want to be sitting anywhere except right where I am right now.
Yes.
That's right.
All right. So I'm going to explain to you what bipolar is. Bipolar is a genetic disorder, so it's not something you inherit. So say borderline personality disorder, that is a disorder that comes from environment, normally childhood trauma, and it can be from a parent that was undiagnosed with bipolar themselves. So it's your functioning, it's your environment, it's your formative years as a child, if you experience, which with Anne Heche we understand that her father molested her, he was gay, a closet gay, he was a church choir, what do you call it, he was in charge of the choir, didn't work, went off on trips. He was actually the first person to die or be in America to be diagnosed with HIV, which he contracted from gay relationships. He used to go to San Francisco, or it was where the oil companies were, and he was saying to his family that he was away working, and he was with his boyfriend, so off doing those things. But you always kind of find that thing with church people, which I find really interesting, that they are closet, they preach about being gay being wrong, or they're, God-loving people and they're respectful, but they're deviates, like they're hiding this. And I think that's the balance of life. Like, you've got to, if you try to be something, it's the yin and yang. If you try to be that pure, completely perfect person, it never actually works out. There's something you're hiding, and that's what I kind of find in behaviors, which so I spent a lot of time listening to the podcast Better Together, and listening to the podcast. What I went through and what I seen was there was a lot of incidents where she was drinking, opening up, she was very fidgety, and there was a interview that I'm going to put in a little bit later that shows at the time she So the baseline, which I showed you the interview before, she's very calm. She's very she is a very extroverted, out there, loud person. But if you watch her body language, you can see there is a little bit of her that does this talking too much and slurring her words, and her movements are talks over people. Whereas in the beginning of the interview that I showed you when she was at baseline, she's very much calm. She'll interact, like her brain, you can see her brain slowing down, and she can just speak normally and allow other people to talk. But as the interviews go along, you watch her and you can see her get very just hyper, very manic, and that's a part of bipolar. You go up and you go down. There's no there's no in between. You're either up here or you're down here, and a lot of people find that really hard in relationships, especially if you're not diagnosed. Something that people don't know. This is recently a personal thing that I've helped someone very close in my life, but they've been on antidepressants all their life because they thought they were depressed, and they're actually not. It was bipolar, and antidepressants don't work for bipolar because it's a mood disorder. It's a different chemical in your brain, so you need a different medication. But as I even say that, and this is what I said to the person, you can't take a tablet and expect your life to change. You've been this way for 56, 57 years of your life. You've coped, but it's the behaviors that you've learnt your whole life. You've got to do both. So you have to do the therapy. Even if you change your medication and you're on the right medication, you've had a lifetime of behaviors that has affected, you've learnt to cope with bipolar or manic depression, whatever you have. You've adapted, we all do. But yeah, you need to do the therapy to retrain your brain and your thinking, your subconscious behavior, and that takes time. So you can't take a pill to change your life. You need to do both. You need to learn how to retrain your thinking, your behavioral patterns, and yeah. She did do a lot of therapy. This is something I learned when I listened to the 5 hours and something of her audiobook. She was very much doing therapy and trying to heal her childhood trauma and trying to work it out. But that's the thing, you don't know where the breaking point with someone is, and a therapist, you get trained to you get trained to identify these things, but you can never predict it. It's always the ones that you don't think are going to do it end up doing it, because they don't talk about it, they just do it. So there wouldn't have been many people around her that would have said anything about, I'm a bit worried about her. They just would have noticed her behavior. But there's a pattern in her life where she's done this after breakups, after times in her life where she's not coped emotionally and been overwhelmed. She does a lot of drugs and goes off and waits for her spaceship. So anyway, in this next bit, I'm gonna do a little bit about her podcast, her book, which I found really interesting. It gives you a real insight into her thinking, because this is her book. It's about her life. So I'm going to play in the next couple of bits a little bit about that. So let's do it.
Part 1. Becoming Anne. The Great Escape. I ran away at 2.5. I only found out, or should I say remembered, this fact of my life after many years of therapy and rebirths and any other measure I could take to get myself up and out of the insanity I was living in until not so long ago. I'm now 31, turning 32 on May 25th. I'm a Gemini, but it was not my birth sign that made me the way I was. I wasn't born with it either. I had to learn to be crazy. Mom, I said into the phone while sitting at my kitchen table years after I ran. I was in my mid-20s and feeling heartsick over having to forgive her again. I had already done it so many times. Mom? Hi. She could barely answer. Mom, you still there? I'm here. Where could I have gone? I hated to think of all the places she had gone before, in reality or not, to avoid all the conversations about unpleasant things, and this was certainly unpleasant and getting more so. I hadn't yet told her of the therapy sessions where I had remembered being gagged, when I would lie on the floor choking, unable to breathe. I hadn't told her what it felt like not to be able to scream out because I had no words yet. What did Cynthia die of, Mom? She had a problem with her heart. I'll say she did. Such a problem she couldn't stick around to take it. Her heart couldn't handle my family. My heart was having a hard time, too. It was beating out of my shirt. My heart was so far out of my shirt it was out the kitchen door, in the backyard where I had planted a tree. It was in the ground under a tree almost buried, unable to beat, unable to beat, unable to breathe. I hated what I had to tell my mother, but I wasn't going to let my father kill me. I was going to beat. I pulled my heart out of the ground and back into the house where I was sitting, and I committed to breathing. I committed to my life even if my sister didn't have hers. I tried to hold back the blame, but I wanted to scream, "You didn't save me. I was young, I couldn't speak. He had his dick in my mouth and you didn't save me, you bitch. She's dead and I'm not and you didn't save me. I wanted you to save me. Do you hear? Do you hear me now? Can you hear me now?" "That's it then," Dad said. "If that's how you want it." He went to his closet and pulled out a belt. We were instructed to pull down our pants and lean over the bed one by one. The plan they had come up with was that Dad was going to hit us with the belt until one of us admitted to stealing the money. We would each get whacked 3 to 5 times depending on what we didn't know, and then have to stand and watch the others get hit until it was our turn again. I think Nathan was the first in line because they thought he was guilty and would confess. Abby was next, and then me. We slowly pulled down our pants and held our breath as we leaned over the bed, one after another, time after time, hit after hit. My father began pummeling Nathan again as hard as he could. "You took it, Nathan. I know you took the money," he said as he whacked his belt down time and again. Abby and I watched as the skin on Nathan's bottom reddened and split open. The lines from the belt were now drawn in blood, and still my father continued. Nathan could no longer hold back his tears, and he screamed out for my father to stop. I thought of when my mother told me that Jews were of the devil. I thought of when I saw the Jews, and I knew that they weren't. She had been mistaken. The devil was in our house, and he most certainly was not a Jew. He was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Christian. I knew right then that my father had taken the money. My father had taken the money and bought the windbreaker and said it was for charity, but it wasn't for charity. My father didn't know from charity. He was the devil, and I saw it in his eyes. Home at Hagar. Dad had moved to New York City after getting kicked out of the Max, but he never got a job. Once in a while, Abby and I took trips to New York to visit and give him some money, but things were awkward. He was still promising diamonds and houses, but we no longer believed him. We knew he was delusional. His mind and body were deteriorating more and more each time we saw him, but he would never admit that he was sick. The most he would say was that he had hepatitis again. We knew that was a lie, but we didn't know what was wrong. Sometimes we would be walking arm in arm, and he would collapse on the curb, unable to get a breath. He would promise me that nothing was wrong, and then he'd disappear for hours at a time. "I'll meet you back at this corner in a few hours, okay? This exact corner." Before I could answer, he would be in a cab screeching away from me. I was 13 years old. He was 45. He would meet me back at the corner with his energy renewed, pretending nothing had ever happened, and we'd return to his apartment on the Lower East Side. "My roommate's out of town again," he would say every time. But I wasn't so stupid. Working in dinner theater had opened my eyes to a lot. I hope I don't blow any covers here, but dinner theater is teeming with gay men. Through my friendships with them, I had come to terms with my father's hidden sexuality. One night I decided to confront him about it, so I asked him where his roommate slept. He lied as usual and told me there was a bedroom up the steps before changing the subject. There was never a question where I would sleep. We always had the same routine. He would undress in front of me, climb naked into his bed, and hold out his hand for me to join him. That night, I resolved that I would never visit him again. Dad died on March 4th, 1983. He was one of the first cases of AIDS diagnosed in the United States. Dad never admitted that he was gay or that he was dying. When my mother visited him in the hospital with Abby and Nathan, he was so sick that he couldn't remember his family. I didn't go. Mom showed him a picture of me to jog his memory, but no such jog. It was unclear back then how the disease was transmitted, and the doctors warned them that it would take about 8 years before any of us would know for sure that we were clean. My mother knew nothing of the extent to which my father had touched me, but that didn't matter. The fear of AIDS was so complete that no one in our town would recognize our father's death. We had to hold the memorial service at the Lambs Theater in New York City, where my father had been going to church because the Baptists in Ocean City wanted nothing to do with him. We listened to friends of my father's talk about a man we had never known. He had been leading a double life since before I was born. His shame of himself oozed into his family and left us with blood we would try to get out for the rest of our lives. 3 months to the day after my father's death, Nathan drove our car off a road and was killed. I would kiss you right now if your brother didn't just die. It was Dave. Dave, the guy that I had been flirting with for 5 years behind my parents' back. I was standing outside in the alley because the apartment was spilling over with people eating cold cuts. I guess the town figured they had to make up for never calling about my father, so everyone was there for my brother. It was okay to mourn for an 18-year-old boy, just not his gross dad. It was all so pathetic. I wanted Dave to kiss me. I wanted anything to get me out of the space I was in, but I couldn't do it. Nathan was dead. My brother was dead. Is Anne. Do you know your last name, Anne? Heche. My name is Anne Celeste Heche. Do you know where you are, Anne? I am in a hospital in Fresno, California. Do you know what year it is? It is the year 2000. My friends waited with bated breath as I answered all the questions correctly. I'm going to release you now, Anne. You can go home with your friends. Wow. Relief. Joy. Each and every person in that hospital took such good care of me. They held my hand and told me the truth. I will never be able to repay them for the stability they offered as I battled my demons in front of them. The next fiasco was getting me out of the hospital without anyone noticing. The press had gotten wind of my arrival, and they were waiting outside each of the sliding glass exit doors. Of course they knew. How couldn't they know? Some famous chick had been wandering through fields of dirt with her shirt off, asking people to join her on her spaceship to heaven. Even I would want that story. Kathy had brought me some clothes, and I donned a floppy cap and black glasses for my escape into the real world. I looked like a sewage rat in a human's clothes, looking to take a stroll on the beach. I stumbled into my truck, which Harley had rescued from the side of the road the night before, and we sped off into the sun-filled Fresno skies, hoping never to return. Yowzy! It is a doozy going crazy. It is a thrill to be sane.
All right, so looking at her book and what she was sort of writing and explaining about her life, it was right after her father died. 3 months later, her brother committed suicide. So he committed suicide he had just graduated from college. He was out driving along and he drove his car into a tree. This is what I found really interesting, and I just can't believe no one's even had this link. I guess the media and stuff kind of look on the surface level, but I just love delving into, like I said, pieces of someone's puzzle. It doesn't just have a snapshot. There's a huge line of things that create the event of her doing this. And just before, as you've seen, that they thought she was drinking. I think she had cocaine and fentanyl. I don't believe it was fentanyl. I believe it was a progression of things that were coming together to create this monster that she committed suicide by. She was circling the block around that house and people were coming out telling her to slow down. If you look how fast she was driving, and there's even someone that slowed it down, the footage, And in the footage, you can see she's lucid. She's aiming at, like, she's got that steering wheel. And I'll try and find the footage. I don't want to get copyright. It happened in my last video. So I'm trying to not do as much footage as I can, because I really want to, like, do these videos without getting YouTube spanked. Is that a thing? YouTube spanked? I don't know. But when anyway, when she was driving into that, the Ring doorbell footage shows she was definitely lucid. So fentanyl, cocaine should be probably right there. They said she had vodka. I don't know the toxicology completely. I couldn't find much on that. But I did find footage of her, and even if you look at her when she did the first accident, so hopefully I've refreshed you with some videos on that. In this timeline we're trying to put together. But one of the things I did notice was the zooming in, she was definitely lucid. There was no way. Fentanyl, she would have been like a heroin addict. They're like, she was like, and especially if she was on cocaine. Cocaine is it's an uphibitor, so it would be making her just like, and if you look at the podcast footage, you're like, with cocaine is an up and alcohol is like a downer, so you're doing both. And that's why she was slurring her words, but she was like ning 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 with the cocaine. So I think she was abusing, and hopefully I demonstrated that over this video where I showed the interview, like the baseline of her when she's mentally well, not using alcohol and drugs, in a healthy relationship, working, doing her videos, movies. And then when something happens and she can't cope emotionally, everyone does. I don't know one person on the earth that doesn't, well, unless you're a Buddha, but to like self-medicate. And from the beginning of the podcast towards the end, you can see that she was deteriorating. And I hope I proved that by showing you the footage and kind of working you through it. Something I really want to say is, I don't want to come in with a clinical sort of point of view with this video and point out all her bad points. I'm trying to educate people to understand behavior so that we can change ourselves and identify it in ourselves, because I'm no angel. I've been through very hard moments where I've self-medicated, and it's nature, but it's learning and growing and changing that behavior is the most important thing. And one of the devastating things I really found with watching her podcast and listening to her book, it broke my heart, because you could see she was genuinely trying to just transform and understand her pain and overcome it and teach others, just like I'm trying to do with my channel. I've been through overwhelmingly horrible things, but it's made me the woman that I am. And it was almost her message that to overcome these incredible feats of trauma and grow and do the work and become a loving, better person still, and not have that hatred in your heart and soul, is something that she was trying to portray. And my gut tells me she was committing suicide. And it was really sad that we haven't identified that, because isn't mental health meant to be something we should be focusing on? Our physical health is affected by our mental health. When you're stressed, your gut has microorganisms in your stomach from stress that reacts to your brain, that causes anxiety, that changes the chemistry in your brain. And when we deal with that and we deal with our inner self and that's what she was basically saying, is that inner work that you have to do. Sometimes you need to go inwards to connect to the true person, the true soul that you are, to heal some wound so you don't self-medicate, so you don't have to feel the pain. You deal with it. You look pain in the face and say, hey motherfucker, I'm stronger, just watch me. And then you become a teacher, and it breaks my heart because she was just on that cusp of her podcast and everything she was doing. It makes me wonder what was really happening in the last couple of weeks of her life, like what was going on, because her podcast was so interesting. And if you really do get a chance, support Heather, her co-host for the Better Together. They're really cool. I think it would have been amazing if Anne had sort of, not let her demons get her again. So the other thing I wanted to get into was that everyone knows, well, everyone in the LBG community should really truly be aware of the depth that Anne Heche contributed to people like celebrities and the world starting to accept lesbian relationships. Anne Heche actually wasn't with any partner, with any females before Ellen. She'd met her at a Met Gala. It was a function, I don't think it was a Met Gala, but she's seen her across the room, and she was just coming out, and they went and fell in love, and they were together for 3.5 years. But she was actually a lot worse off than Ellen. She seemed to get blacklisted. She had a movie coming out, a premiere, and she wanted Ellen to come with her. They'd only been together, I think, 2 weeks, but she knew that she was in love, and she explains in her book about how she falls in love with the soul, not the person, like not the gender. And she really created that change. Even in her podcast, she talks about that, how she was just blacklisted from Hollywood, and Ellen kind of left her in the dark, and she didn't talk about it for a very long time. And it was only on her podcast she started actually really talking to people about her experience and what happened on her side, because Ellen became very wealthy. What was it? She's worth $6 billion now or something, and that's all she was worried about. And Anne she's a very free-spirited soul. She cared about was the love. She wanted to feel loved in life, and Ellen was more about money and career and achievement. And I'm a dick. I love how Heather says that in her thing. I'm a dick. Don't be a dick. I am a dick. Hey guys, thank you so much for sticking around if you have till now. I really appreciate you. I'm still just loving the research and doing this, and hopefully I keep putting up videos. My next one I'm going to be talking about, actually I'm not going to tell you, it's really interesting. But I'm filming hopefully tomorrow, and I'll edit this one tomorrow, and I'll have it up soon. But thank you for sticking around, and leave a comment if you could see the progression, or like of her drug use, or you believe that it was suicide. I love your comments, I really do. So anyway, thanks for being here. I'll say g'day mate, take care, and I will hopefully see you next time. Like I said, subscribe, like, do whatever you want. I hate saying that, it cringes me. I just, you know what, the people that are going to be here and like it do. The ones that don't, you can have another channel. Anyway guys, thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Bye. I'm a dick. Done. And we're done. Yeah. Next one.